All right, welcome to today's session on in training endurance capacity. All right, we're going to go over a couple things, especially just looking at energy systems and development and other energy systems. Basically, energy system development. So it is cardio conditioning, right? That's what we're going to work on. Tuesday, Thursdays on our free online plan is dedicated towards that. But for those of you that are clients and current members, of course, you get more specific details of what your intervals look like. So we're going to go over a couple things. Just kind of shout out to my friend right here. This is Andy Gelpin. If you ever want to check out his videos, check out his YouTube channel. This is a short 5-minute video here, kind of goes over the background of what conditioning training is, endurance training, looking at the energy systems itself. We're not going to spend too much time on that today. We're going to kind of fast forward and go into the next thing. So overall, we're looking at the energy system chart here. This is going way back to my exercise science days, at least a decade now for me at the university level. But we're looking at a couple of different things. Number one, that oxidative or aerobic type of training, which is this green line here. That's our thing that can go on forever and ever, right? That's our aerobic base curve. We only have a certain amount of ability for the other two systems in our body. The majority of our energy needs are usually in the oxidative side. All right, so kind of looking at this, of course, we got that glycolytic glycolysis, which is this red line. Those are those short type of intervals, anywhere from 30 seconds all the way up to about 5 minutes out. Our fighters and typically our athletes are working in those type of ranges there. We are typically hammering out, making sure they're very efficient in that glycolytic system there. And of course, the ATP, CP, adenosine triphosphate, creatine phosphate energy system, those are your short sprints. Those are your power efforts. Those are your 5-rep type of efforts. Those are your 10 seconds max. That's what that is right there. So you can't run for a very long time at a high speed. That's just why you have very limited range. It turns over very fast, but it doesn't replenish very fast. So we're kind of looking over the whole energy systems here. Next thing here, the oxidative system. This is this chart here, and I'll actually give this. I'll share this out to everybody as well. This will be on our website. But overall, the oxidative system is looking at different types of energy system that you're using. Obviously, active recovery, looking at power or threshold heart rate, as well as endurance and threshold heart rates. If you're using a heart rate monitor, definitely recommended. We typically use those a lot. We have different zones, right? Zones 1 through 5. Typically, this is our zone 2 and 3. So what we're looking at here. Of course, you can see how you feel, like on the RPE scale. On a scale of 1 to 10, this is basically between a 1 and a 3. These are paces you can go forever in a sense, right? The all-day pace. Right, going forward into that glycolytic system, this is where most of our intervals are really focused on. We're looking at not necessarily tempo. A lot of the stuff is around that tempo work, but looking a little bit more at threshold. Threshold is really looking at a little above what your threshold is. That's your VO2 max type of efforts. We've seen great work come from this, so we do this a lot, and that's typically what we really want to focus on a lot of our intervals, especially if you're an athlete that requires you to be out there for anywhere from 5 minutes all the way up into 3 hours, that kind of work. Even as an ultra endurance type of athlete, we still would recommend doing some of this. Most of your training wouldn't focus in here, but still having some of it would be good. The other one, looking next, going forward, glycolytic, again, those are those VO2 max efforts. If you are a endurance athlete, or again, a team sport athlete, a fighter, any athlete that requires you to have a pretty good conditioning base, VO2 max efforts are some of the best stuff that's out there. Anywhere from 90 seconds all the way, actually typically anywhere from 3 minutes all the way out to 8 minutes. But we're usually typically looking at power numbers for those things, even at heart rate. So let's just say, I'll give you an example of me. My threshold heart rate is right around 135. So if I'm doing efforts like this, I'm typically hitting about 140 to 143 beats per minute. Power as well, I'm looking a little above my threshold. Let's just say my threshold was 100 watts. I'm typically doing about anywhere from 106 to 120 watts if that was my threshold per se. But it's just making it easy if that goes. The next thing, again, the adenosine triphosphate phosphate creatine effort. These are very, very hard, right? These are extremely hard efforts, not very long, especially if you're looking at neuromuscular power. Those are usually jumping. Those are maximal type of efforts there. Really no heart rate or power numbers will relate to it because you're just trying to be as explosive as possible. Same thing goes for building your anaerobic capacity here. Again, that's going to be anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes out. We typically don't like to have this more than, training like this more than once a week. So we're trying to really limit that stuff. So overall, give you some examples here. This is the best way to kind of look at it. If you're doing some oxidative work, 20 minutes all the way out to 90 minutes out. Again, if you're an ultra type of athlete, if you're doing anything more than that, that's great. Just kind of pay attention to your heart rate zones. If you're doing glycolytic work, those are usually done in circuits or interval type of training there. Again, that can be anywhere. If you're putting on a 45-second hard effort, 45-second easy effort, or so on and so forth there. Anytime you're doing those kind of clusters, 30 on, 30 off, 20 on, 20 off, anything like that, it's typically going to fall right in this range right here. You can't really get a lot of explosive work with minimal rest. That's going to lead us to this ATP PC type of stuff. Again, very short efforts, but obviously very big on recovery. That's probably the number one thing I would advise to when most people do intervals, is to make sure you're getting the appropriate amount of rest time. If you're working on glycolytic work, your rest time is typically the same as your work time. If you're working on ATP PC work, your rest time is typically anywhere from 8 to 10 times longer than your actual effort. Those are the big things I see going forward with training, and I look at clients and I see what they've done in the past. That's the number one thing I usually see, is they don't really treat their ATP PC work as true ATP PC work, because they're literally just going 10-second on, 10-second off, thinking they're training this, but in reality they're actually training this. So these two training areas are big, and we like to work on those a lot. Again, and active recovery type of stuff, definitely that oxidative work. We're trying to build that aerobic type of base. You're in an off season as well. Those are great to do. But again, it's all going to depend on what you have access to. Okay, so definitely concentrate on this stuff. I'll have that this chart out for everybody to see. I'll definitely leave a screenshot up of it as well. It'll be on our website. But thanks for tuning in. Please comment or share this if you have any other questions, or you need somebody that needs some advice on training their cardiorespiratory system. Right, Thursday we'll kind of talk about what those intervals look like overall. All right, thank you. Stay tuned for our next stuff.